Hey guys, welcome back. We have finished. Finished talking about the muckrakers. We spent some time talking about the roots of progressivism, right? The idea that beginning in the Midwest with the Wisconsin Plan, states are going to start addressing at the local levels um, issues of reform that have been called for way back for the populace, right? We talked about women's suffrage, recall, initiative, referendum, and the direct primary system, all of which we went over the other day, that are really important steps in increasing democratic participation in the political process. Remember, that's the main goal of the progressives. We're also going to target other things, tenement housing with Jacob Riis, right? Alcohol with the prohibition movement, which we'll talk about, gambling, corruption in New York City, particularly the police department. And this local and state movement has real national impact. And because of how much success it has there, as these types of progressive elected officials get elected to national office, we start to see change there as well. And we get a series of progressive amendments that are passed and added to the Constitution that have real impact today. One of them no longer exists, but the other three are very important. The 16th Amendment is a direct call from the populace creating the income tax, right? The graduated income tax. The more you pay, the more you make, the more you should pay, right? And that was originally deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, which is why an amendment is the only thing that can override a Supreme Court decision. That's why this was passed. The 17th Amendment provides for the direct election of U.S. senators. Again, another call from the populace. If you remember previously, you could not vote for your state senators, your national senators. They were elected by the state legislatures. So now we've gotten rid of that kind of millionaires club, as it was called, right? The Nelson M. Aldrich characters that were owned by the trusts. Now we're going to let people pick their senators. A very important step in increasing democratic participation. The 18th Amendment was a direct response to the temperance movement, which was the idea that alcohol was the root of all evil. So the 18th Amendment prohibits the manufacturing, sale, or transportation of alcohol and creates what we know as the period of prohibition. This temperance movement really comes from the Bible Belt, right? These fundamentalist Christian areas in the Midwest and the South that believe that if we got rid of alcohol, we wouldn't have any problems. Certainly when we talk about the 1920s, we're going to see that alcohol consumption, transportation, manufacturing was still going on, despite the fact that it was banned on the federal level. And the 19th Amendment creates women's suffrage, right? So it allows women the right to vote. This had begun long, long ago. The work of the Seneca Falls Convention of Susan B. Anthony all the way back to 1872. And we haven't gotten to World War I yet, but this kind of runs simultaneously. Following the important involvement of women on the home front during World War I, many people saw that women had earned the right to vote, as if that was something that they needed to earn. But it is their work there that really puts them over the edge on top of the real push for women's suffrage. So we get these four very important amendments on the national stage that really start to cement the idea of the populace, as well as the idea of increased democratic participation. And this really all culminates with the presidency of Teddy Roosevelt, who many would consider to be one of the most progressive presidents in American history. He was a Republican, so that generally kind of breaks the norms for what we think for progressive presidents, but that really didn't bother him much at all. He is not elected to the presidency in 1900. We'll talk about in our next chapter. He assumes the presidency after the assassination of William McKinley in 1901. But he very much believed that the presidency needed to go beyond what was in the Constitution. And really, particularly from an economic perspective, there wasn't enough of an outline for what the president should or should not do. And you see this quote here from Joseph Cannon, who's the Speaker of the House, where Roosevelt had as much regard for the Constitution as a tomcat for a marriage license. He just didn't care. He was going to do whatever was necessary and really set the precedent of presidents becoming involved in economic crises. Certainly for his distant cousin, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he will take a very similar tact. He was not interested in getting rid of capitalism. We're going to see he very much believed in capitalism. He just thought we needed to rein in some things. And he believed that he needed to give a square deal to Americans. He took it from an expression from a program, what he saw as a correct deal, right? We need to just level the playing field a little bit. And it was based on the 3 C's: corporations, consumers, and conservation. These are his big areas. We need to control corporations because they're getting out of control. We need to protect consumers, particularly after he read The Jungle, and conservation, which was maybe his most long-lasting impact. And there's 5 sections to his square deal. Intervening on the behalf of labor, trust busting, which is the breaking up of monopolies, reining in the railroads, the food, which we've certainly talked about, and conservation, which we'll probably spend most of our time in. But you see this quote here. He says, the labor union shall have a square deal, and the corporation shall have a square deal. And in addition, all private citizens shall have a square deal. He wanted to make sure everyone's on the same playing field, whether they were corporations or citizens, and that was very important to Roosevelt. And that sets up his intervention in things like the coal strike of 1902, which we'll talk about. Certainly his trust busting. There's a great political cartoon here that we'll get into in class. His use of the big stick, as we'll find out, which is very much more of a foreign policy thing. And then most importantly, really where he has the most impact is in conservation. And you're going to read an article about TR and his conservationism for homework tonight.